Rugby is a game of passion, speed and power. Playing rugby is a great experience and a great talking point with people, and yet when asked what you do, when you answer, all you get is a glazed look of confusion. Unlike football, in which somebody naturally understands the meaning of attacker, midfielder and defender, if you say to someone you play prop or lock or outside centre, all you're doing is telling them a random selection of letters. So what I plan to do is help explain each and every position you can play across the pitch in rugby union, from the battlefield of the front row all the way to the speed machines of the wing. You will learn what it takes to play each and every position, for things like training in diets to injury prevention and tricks of the trade.
And this sorts the men from the boys. Pause! Engage!
And where they go again, massive scrum and picked up now by Morgan. He rolls, tries to get it down, but it is a penalty try, says Nigel Owens. England have their try, the forwards have their reward.
Well, that's what they were going for. They didn't want a three-pointer or even an attempt at. They wanted that.
A rugby team comprises of 15 players, 8 forwards and 7 backs. The fullback wears the number 15 shirt and is part of the backs. He is placed at the very back of the back line, in between the two wingers, and is genuinely the last line of defence. But in one sentence, what is the fullback?
The goalkeeper. The goalkeeper that basically lives and dies on his defence in many ways. I think, attacking wise he's brilliant, but at the end of the day, defence is key.
So fullback is the last line of defence. He's the coordinator of what you might call the back three, so the fullback and the two wings. And so really in defence they're there to cover all kicks that are put through by the opposition. And then in attack they're there to counter-attack if the space is there, or come into the line when the team's attacking to add extra dimension. And in a sense to be the eyes and ears, because you get a good perspective from the back of the pitch. You see the way the play is going, so it's quite a pivotal position. Usually you've got a planned call on, so you've got an idea as to what the move should be. So if it's a back move, then you'll be involved in some way, either as a decoy runner or making the extra man to put the wingers away, or trying to score yourself if you've got the space.
It's very much kind of understanding what the 10's thought process is. So you almost want to be thinking as a 10, thinking where you're going to position yourself. But then what is to be a little bit tricky behind it, or is to kind of say, right, I'm going to stand in this position because I want the 10 to kick in there. So as soon as he receives the ball and looks up, you've then moved into the position he wants to kick. So it's kind of like a game of chess. You're trying to outfox the opposite 10 or the opposite 12, depending who might be kicking the ball.
It's their ball, you're trying to work out where are they trying to get the ball. So in other words, if it's kick defence, you're trying to work out what's the best kick for them and then cover that, or make sure it's covered with your wingers. So what you don't want to do is give them an easy out, so a really easy big space for them to land the ball in.
So your open play is, if we've got the ball, is looking for opportunities either on a counter-attack or trying to hit the line at pace. On defence, it's very much, again, being that goalkeeper, stopping little kicks through or chips through, but also pushing up outside the defensive line to tackle that last man to close the gate, what they call it in rugby.
I suppose really being heads up and aware of where the opposition is, where your support is, so that it can be pretty lonely out there because you're right at the back on your own, and the one thing you don't want to be doing is getting caught on your own, all of the opposition piling onto you and none of your players behind you. That's bad, and generally the forwards get a bit upset if you do that too many times.
It's difficult because I was very skinny. I was like 89 kilograms when I went to Wasps, and they wanted to put a bit of weight on me, so I was very quick, whippet-like, but obviously I needed to survive and take the hits in the game. So it's all about getting that power to weight ratio, and I think probably my fighting weight was about 96 kilograms, and I was able to run pretty quick, but also be able to power through tackles or take tackles.
Yeah, I mean obviously the perfect blend is Jonah Lomi, where you've got both. I think speed is always hard to beat. Certainly if I was looking at an opponent, if he was big, okay, it's going to hurt when you tackle him, but by and large you hopefully get him. Whereas if a guy is so fast that you can't touch him, then that's going to hurt you. So I'd say over the two, speed's probably a priority.
It's huge. I mean, when I was growing up, a lot of the older players talked about communication as key, and you never really thought about it, but a lot of it is just chat. It's kind of knowing that you got your guy on the left or on your right, and you're looking out for certain things. It's also kind of talking to the opposition, kind of outwitting them, saying that, kick the ball, trying to tempt them into doing something they don't want to do. So communication's very much key to the game.
Depends who the wingers are. If they're from the north, then it can be a bit of a struggle. We should be communicating all the time, and certainly there'll be some wingers that you enjoy playing with more than others, because they've got that awareness, they're good footballers. It's probably a generalisation, but sometimes there are wingers who are absolutely deadly with the ball in their hand but haven't got a clue when the opposition have got the ball, and so you need to be talking to them a lot more. So there were certainly players that I felt very comfortable playing with and could almost leave them to manage their own space, whereas there are others who I was chatting to all the time, checking that they were covering the right areas and not leaving us with big gaps.
I think you need speed, I think you need to be elusive, I think you have to be a good tackler, and you have to be great under the high ball. We've probably seen since the French World Cup that the utilisation of the up and under has come more into play. So you have to be strong under that, but also you have to be tactically very good at kicking as well.
I think awareness, bravery, and then physical attributes, evasiveness, so in other words an ability to create space, to use space, and then pace, as I've said, and then really a good communicator, so somebody who can marshal defence and provide feedback as to what needs to be done.
I think you have some that are very technical players, like your Lee Halfpennies, but then you have kind of your other players that I suppose, Jason Robertson, your elusive players that naturally see the game. So I think there's two types of fullbacks. There's the kind of guy that understands the game and probably one step ahead of the game because of his thought process, and then you have the kind of natural fullback that will just run from anywhere, probably like a Hogg at Scotland. It was very much, weights in the mornings, trying to make sure that you're good at your plyometrics, so when catching the ball, and then there was a lot of hand-eye coordination stuff. Again, being strong under the high ball, we had various people coming in from the likes of Ireland with the Gaelic football, so we had specialists in that area, and then also specialists in kicking. So they were the kind of the specialist areas that they would help you on. And then after that, it was kind of more natural skill set that you'd work on, which is your kicking, running and passing. But then a lot of it is down to what you see in the game. You can't really practice, a match situation. It's all kind of peripheral vision and be able to take the gap at the right time.
I mean, I can contrast between when I first started playing and then later on, because to begin with, the training was so amateur, it was unbelievable. The standard training would be we would run up the pavement 2 miles to a pub and not go in it, and then come back again, and that was our standard sort of fitness training, along with then doing training drills. By the time I finished, it had become much more sophisticated, and they were looking at different positions and what each position needed. So I did a lot of speed endurance work, so flat out sprint speed wasn't necessary, but longer 30, 40, 50 metre runs were what I was ideally needed, and so things like 8 by 300 metre interval training sessions, so sort of long endurance sprint training would be the interval training would be the mainstay. But in between that, adding in weights, although that was one of the things that I was struggling to get time to do, to be honest, after doing my goal kicking and everything else.
A lot of it is kicking on the run, so it's kind of being able to kick the ball, but then on your dominant foot, but also land on your foot after kicking it. So it's kind of all one motion, so you're not kick and stop back. There has probably come into the game a little bit with the up and unders now, where you kick the up and under and then you stay back. But kicking is a huge part of it, but it's also the range of kicking. So you try and put as close to in a practice situation, or what you'd probably experience in the game. And either someone flying out the line, so you push the ball through, or someone staying back and you keep it in hand and make it pass. So it was trying to make you aware of the situation you'd be under and what kind of kick you'd put in. I think you play a little bit with your 8 and your 10, simply because, especially on counter-attack, normally the 8 will be catching it, or you'll be catching it giving to the 8. Similarly, you'll be working with a 10. If a 10 kicks a up and under, you're normally in the back play with you. So, alongside the wingers, you maybe a little bit with the outside centre. You on a kick, when someone's kicking to you, you like your outside centre to work straight to the wing, so you've got someone to pass to you straight away to give you width. So it's a combination, really. No, I mean, initially when I started rugby, I was trying to get as much weight on me as possible, and now kind of as you get older, they gradually tell you not to eat so much. But it's pretty much the usual stuff, really. Your protein shakes, healthy living, try and cut down on the alcohol. But I mean, I was very much of a player that you eat how you feel and what makes you feel good. I remember Kevin Maggs used to have pancakes and a can of Coke before playing a rugby game, which a lot of people would squint at, but that made him feel good in the game. And I think ultimately, probably like Warren Gatland says, is as long as you turn up and you perform at your optimum, then who matters what happens in the rest of the week. And I think as an individual, it's down to you to get you to that place on a Saturday or Sunday.
Nope. It was a seafood diet. Seafood and eat it. I mean, I couldn't put weight on for love nor money. I mean, honestly, I could have eaten a house and it wouldn't have made an ounce of difference to my weight. Sadly, that's changed. No, honestly, I had a pretty healthy diet anyway. I wasn't somebody who particularly craved burgers or chips, but I didn't avoid them. I mean, if they were there, I'd eat them. But there wasn't a nutritionist, there wasn't advice. We certainly didn't have protein supplements or anything like that. And I've certainly got my views about the necessity of some of these things.
Well, you're probably looking at about 3,500 calories, really, depending on the training. You're probably burning about 2,000. But then if you're doing a lot of weights and stuff, you obviously want to gain muscle. If you're maintaining, it's a case of trying to maintain around about 3,000 calories. So the meals, I was very much about eating quite large breakfasts. Lunches was hard, depending on your training time, but I kind of liked a big lunch. And then I tend to tail off, especially in my latter part of the career, on evening meals, because that's where you really pick up the fat. So you're trying to keep that lean body mass to an optimum, really.
Not a clue. I think the only time I can remember changing it was when before the '91 World Cup, I did quite a heavy 8-week session of weight training. You may not have noticed it, but it was there. And during that time, I ate more regularly and more high protein. So I made a specific thing about eating every 3 hours and making sure I was eating sort of good times either side of when I was training, because I was trying to bulk up and get a bit of muscle on.
Well, it's interesting because it depends on what fitness guys like what, and at Voyce it was very much running based, and I went to Gloucester and it was initially weights based. So depending on the volume of weights, the more weights you do, the more you need to eat. Get your proteins on. But then when it's coming to your kind of running and cardio stuff, then you obviously want to get your electrolytes in and your carbohydrates, so you're always energized. So it depends on the training, but it is a balance between protein enriched or carbohydrate rich, depending on what training session you do. Yeah, I mean, you know, going through the years, probably the best one was at Gloucester, and they're very much about, you know, being flexible. Unfortunately, I mean, I've been very fortunate. I have hardly had any injuries through my career, and I like to say that that's because I'm not as flexible and as bendy as other people. But I think if someone put as an expression that people try and make players like a Ferrari, but if you're a Ferrari, you dent easily, you get break down easily, and I think sometimes you have to train to be like a Volkswagen, something that's reliable, that can constantly bash out. And I think some guys' bodies are made for rugby, some guys aren't made for rugby, but it's a case of you can be a bit too flexible or a bit too kind of precious, and I think that's where you see the guys that are injured. Like an Ian Bolshaw was a fantastic athlete but always injured, and you tend to question, well, is that because he wanted to be at his optimum, be his most flexible? And rugby is a kind of funny game. It's a odds and sods in picking and lifting and pushing around, so it's just a case of trying to get the right balance again for the individual.
I mean, I was pretty conscientious about stretching and warming down and warming up, and I was always very disciplined about doing all that, so I wasn't somebody who tended to sort of pitch up and just go and train without getting warmed up properly. So I think I only pulled my hamstring once on a really frosty day when I was doing some sprinting down on an AstroTurf pitch. That's the only time I ever did that. Otherwise, most of the stuff was sort of usual concussion and thigh injury, you know, blows, direct trauma, rather than muscle. Thankfully, I didn't have any pelvic or groin injuries or low back problems, so I got away with it pretty well.
No, I mean, I've seen Lawrence and Joe Worsley, you know, smacking into each other, smacking into walls, but I suppose me and my companion Paul Saki were very much the looser kind of getting ready for a game, and it was we always had scrambled eggs and bacon in the morning, which I'd cook, and then it was very much R&B, hip hop going to the game, and we used to have a chicken sandwich and a can of Coke, and we were very relaxed. You know, we were fooling around in the change room. We didn't disturb anyone else's preparation, but for me, I had to keep my mind off the game until you cross the whitewash, and then I can click in. And I was very fortunate I have that mindset where some people have to build up over a period of time, and I just couldn't play a game in my head before the game played. And there was times I didn't get to bed until like 1-2 o'clock in the morning, simply because I didn't want to go to bed. So I was very relaxed, jovial, bit of banter, you know, happy to speak to the opposition and all that kind of thing, where other people are like, oh, I don't want to talk to anyone. And so yeah, I was very relaxed compared to likes of the Joe Worsleys of this world and Lawrence Delalliers.
Well, I suppose I'd say that the mental preparation, just like the physical preparation, was all done beforehand. In other words, if you hadn't done any mental preparation before the game, it was a bit late. It's a bit like saying, try and do a bit of fitness before you run out on the pitch. It's a bit late by then. You've got, it's a bit like an exam. You've got to do your work beforehand. And so goal kicking for me was the biggest indicator of how well I was prepared mentally. And you had to do the work beforehand so that you came into the game positive and not fearing failure. That was my main task, was to arrive at the game not being afraid of stuffing it up. You know, basically, it's, as a fullback, it's fairly high profile. If you drop the ball, if you miss your kicks, it's pretty obvious to every single person that you've stuffed up, but trying not to let that make you inhibited, make you anxious and not go for it, not play to your full capacity is easier said than done. And the bigger the game, the bigger the pressure, the more you tend to turn inwards and not express yourself freely.
Probably international level, I wasn't as jovial because you're more in a serious environment and you obviously want to make sure you're perceived to be doing the right thing. So I probably kind of kept myself to myself a little bit more, and especially in that environment, you know, you have to earn your straps. So I was very early in my stages in my England career, where then when you're like it, you know, your Wasps or Gloucesters, and because you've done it for years and years, people don't really care because you know you've done it, been there, you know, worn the t-shirt. So yeah, international was different compared to like club rugby.
Not so much differently, but just like I said, that as the pressure racks up, as the as the profile, the number of people involved, the number of people who interact with you leading up to a game gets more and more, then if there are any flaws in your character in terms of being able to cope with it, then it'll find it out. So an international is more likely to find out a problem with your setup, be it physical or mental. You know, you're getting stressed by the opponent who's that much quicker than the last winger you faced, and your mental setup is being stressed by the big match more so that you're more likely to have a blowout and fail. I think it's vital. We know that your risk of injury is higher if you're not stretched off, if you're not got the muscles warmed up, ready to perform at the highest level. Probably more important is warming down, actually. You know, in other words, if you know, I wouldn't advise missing either, but if you, for whatever reason, had to, then I'd actually a relatively smaller warm up, but a much longer warm down and stretch down. We didn't have the cold baths. That was the other thing that I'm very glad that I retired before they were introduced. That would have been a nightmare.
I think so. I mean, Sean Edwards hated it because he didn't think you were concentrating on the game, and I've seen him, you know, run up to James Haskell and rip his earplugs out before going to game because he didn't think he's focusing on the game. But for me, like, music is a feel-good, you know, and there probably are tests out there being that you wake up in the morning and have a happy song on, you actually feel happy during the day. So I'm a big believer in music, and I'll play how I feel. And you know, I've gone from classical to kind of probably R&B, whatever, simply on how I felt that day. So for me, it was a key thing. Sometimes I just didn't want to listen to music because there was a lot of crap music on, or I downloaded the right thing, and I'll just put it off and watch a video or something like that. Yeah, I mean, what's key, and it's a very fine balance, is that if you get a good hit and you're pushing on, you want the ball as they're going forward still, because you can imagine they're on a back foot, so that gives you that 2 yards when attacking. So it is quite key. If you don't win the hit, then you've got to then position yourself well. That's great attacking ball for them. So then you've got to then think about, right, how do I stop them on attacking us? Where if they didn't get quite the hit, then they're going to probably kick the ball. So you do have to be aware of the hit, and pretty much also how it wheels as well. Sometimes when you see yourself in the middle of the pitch and it wheels one way or the other, you know they're going to attack down that aisle. So you then position yourself probably to go down there, or be aware to go down there, so you're kind of ahead of the game, so to speak. I never thought I'd say it, but Mike Brown probably. I wasn't sure about him, but I think he's really impressed over the Six Nations. He's steady. He always beats the first defender. You know, he's probably not as elusive, but as, you know, and as flary as like your Israel Dags. You know, he's probably certainly up there. But I think, you know, consistently, and certainly over the Six Nations, he was winning man of the matches. So for me, he was the best fullback in the world at the moment.
Been massively impressed with Mike Brown this season. Honestly, he wasn't my favourite player a couple of years ago. I couldn't quite see what he was that good at. You know, in the sense he was very capable, but I felt nothing more than that. And in the last couple of years, he's just come on absolutely leaps and bounds. I honestly can say I don't think he put a foot wrong pretty much in the Six Nations tournament we've just had. He was faultless under the high ball. He always made ground, even in the most unlikely circumstances. People seem to tackle him, and he's got such good strength and hip strength that he's shrugging people off, and that is so devastating. It's even better than never being tackled at all, because if people think they've tackled somebody and then they go again, that's really hurts you. So he's right up there. I think is it Falau, the Australian fullback? He's quite a handful. So I'd say he's a different player, and at the moment I think teams would fear Brown in the side against them more than him at the minute.
So there you go, the fullback, the last man, the last line of defence. Keep watching out for more episodes of Scrummage to learn how to play every position of rugby union.